Joining me here on set in New York, Dr. Gail Saltz, a psychiatrist and criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor, Robert Bianchi. When we look at all this, Gail, what really kind of blows my mind here is we hear one of the girls say, I felt no remorse. I thought I would, but I didn't. And they look so young in those pictures, like very young 12-year-olds. Can you really, at that age, be convinced by some fake online character that you should stab your friend?
Look, the defense is probably talking about whether this could be a shared delusional disorder. In other words, did one of them have a psychotic idea about Slenderman and become so engrossed with the other that they shared this delusion? It used to be called folie à deux, a fantasy of two. This is something that can psychiatrically happen, but I want to say it's incredibly rare. I can't think of a case where it happened with such a young person. Also, although psychotic illnesses can happen in young people, again, very rare. And usually it would happen with two people who were isolated from other people. So they don't have input from other people. And two girls who are living with their families, that's also hard to claim.
Right.
On the other hand, and by the way, it doesn't mean that they don't understand what they're doing is wrong. You can have a delusion, you can be psychotic, but if you still know that what you're doing is a crime and wrong, it doesn't make you legally insane, you know, even if you have a mental illness. On the other hand, it is possible that you can be a sociopath from a very young age. You can have brain differences, biological differences, or trauma that leads you to actually have no moral compass, not feel empathy, and be capable of killing somebody even at a young age.
You bring up the point about having the capacity, essentially, to understand what's happening. And, Bob, that's a lot of what the attorneys in this courtroom are going to be dealing with here, whether or not the capacity was there to understand what was going on at this moment in time. How does that play out?
As a prosecutor, you're going to look for goal-directed behavior both before, during, and right after the incident to show. And legally, you have to prove, one, that they suffered from a legitimate scientific psychiatric illness. Two, whether or not they knew they were so debilitated that they could not appreciate that their conduct was right or wrong. And then three, that they had no ability to control that conduct. That's the legal standard. We deal with delusional people all the time in the legal system, but they don't meet that insanity definition. And with this case, there are so many facts in favor of the prosecution to show they knew exactly what they were doing.
Well, and one of the things that we're seeing on the screen right now is that police were saying this kill supply list that the girls had, that they admit that they had plotted this from the start, that they actually invited this girl, Peyton, who they stabbed, to a sleepover. When all of that comes into the courtroom, that makes it even more difficult, Bob.
I think that's really a problem in the sense that when people are very psychiatrically ill, very delusional and very psychotic, it does usually affect their judgment to plan, to create a plan that is detailed and logical. Would be difficult if, for instance, you were looking at a child that was developing schizophrenia or something that would explain why they became psychotic.
Well, that's something that I found interesting here. No one knew they had schizophrenia before this. Their own psychiatrist indicates that this is, if not rare, unique. They had planned it. They had balked at doing it. They lured her into a bathroom. They lured her into the woods. There's very goal-directed behavior here. It shows that they were executing a plan, and then afterwards they tried to escape. It's what we call in the law consciousness of guilt. And that consciousness of guilt will eradicate that factor in the insanity defense that says you could not appreciate the rightfulness or wrongfulness of your actions.
And it doesn't mean that they wouldn't have, perhaps, maybe one of them did believe in Slenderman and did feel, you know, delusionally so, that this was real and that she was at risk. Those things could coexist. You could believe this, which would be concerning,
right?
And doesn't necessarily mean an ongoing mental illness. You could believe this, and at the same time, understand that what you were doing is wrong, and go ahead and plan it anyway.
And the answer to that would be, in the medical world, you should be treated. But in the legal world, if you have both a delusion, but you knew what you were doing is wrong, end the story for the defendant.
Bob, Gail, really appreciate both of you weighing in on this today. Thank you.